Good evening, guys. Welcome to the 5th installment of the School of Struggle podcast. Chris M here with Mark Fator and Zah Azmi. Hello again, boys.
Hello.
G'day. How are you?
How are we? We good?
Very well.
Good.
Very well.
I'm very glad to hear that you're both
excited.
very well.
We're excited.
Good.
We are
good,
excited.
Good. We're excited for a few reasons. Firstly, today's topic will be something quite deep and dear to many people that we know. And a lot of people will take some value out of the strategy that we may have to help with this. And the topic is actually anxiety. It's something that captures so many different people without them even knowing it. And it can really affect their life so negatively. And something needs to be done about it. But firstly, I'd like to just give thanks to every single person that's been listening. We did a bit of a look at the statistics and analytics on the back end of this. We've done 4 podcasts so far. 1,143 downloads.
Incredible.
I can't be more grateful for that. That's sensational. Thank you so much, every single person that has put in the time, effort to listen to it. If you're getting some value from it, I've heard a few people message me and they said it's great. But if there's more of you out there who are getting some great value out of this, please tell us. Please, I'd love to hear what your feedback is on all the content so far, because we believe that we're providing some great stuff, and obviously the statistics in the back end will prove that and back it up. But we'd love some extra feedback from our listeners anyway. Today should be a good one. It'll be one that if you can't take something out of it, it might be something that you can help someone with. Like I said, anxiety. 30% of Australians are subject to anxiety yearly, and that changes person by person every year. So 1 in 3 people, there's 3 of us here, that means that one of us he could or may have had anxiety in the past. Definitely. I'll put my hand up, I have.
Yeah.
And
We've all been through it.
Exactly. I know I have, and when I say 30% of the time, I think it rotates.
Yeah.
Like you might be going through something, Zah. Mark might be going through the week later, and then I may be too. You know what I mean? So I think it's one that needs to be really, really, really touch base and be covered. Now, what is anxiety? It's essentially a feeling of worry, nervousness, unease, or just being uncertain about a certain outcome that might be coming up as well. Anxiety is 110% all from a mindset and thought process and all to the stuff. It can always have something to do with external factors as well. External factors are usually the biggest thing that actually will spark an anxious feeling. Yep. Whether it's an upbringing, a way that things are done, just the way that a person's treating you, the energy a person can bring to you in any conversation as well, can spark anxiety in any way, shape or form. And it's pretty scary. Like, it's scary stuff and can really, really, really bring you down, hey? And it can stop you in your emotions and stop all productivity. And I think the only thing that's helped myself, and like I said, I'll get into a story a bit later, beat the adversity of anxiety was being creative. And you know, for lack of better words, digging yourself out of the anxiety grave, because so many people, like, they get into a depression state afterwards as well. But being creative really helped me, personally. Anyway, boys, what's your thought on it? What do you know about anxiety? You said you both have had some in the, like, you know, spouts of in the past. My personal thought is it's almost doubting yourself and letting external factors come in and really, really, really affect your mind state. What's your take on it? What do you believe the anxiety is, and how can people benefit from it? Because if anxiety pops in, you know you need to change something as well. So
Anxiety for me is split up into 2 different categories, right? There's anxiety when it comes to, you know, it just comes on out of nowhere and you just don't know why, right? And that's where people tend to, you know, they seek professional help, or they might hide away, and however they deal with it, they might turn to drugs and alcohol and all of that sort of stuff, which is quite common.
And it can always, a lot of it can be induced by that as well.
That too, because that can promote
it just makes it worse, right?
So there's that type of anxiety, and then there's I call it business anxiety, or work-related anxiety, where you're overwhelmed with all the work that you have. You lack control. Because either you don't have the right education or experience to, tackle the task on hand, and you kind of shell up and you don't know what to do, right? And I've been through a lot of that. With the other stuff, when it comes to the personal side of things. Fortunately, I haven't really gone through those random bouts of anxiety attacks or anything like that. However, it's always got to do with work for me, right? So I still go through, glitches of anxiety till this day. And, I've put it down to, your mental fitness. So, an analogy that we'll use today is back to fitness, which is our favorite analogies, is that, when we're in the gym, like, for example, when I started boxing, before my first time I had to jump into the ring to spar someone, I got anxious, I got anxiety because I wasn't confident.
Yep.
I lacked control. It was the fear of the unknown. I'd never done it before. And then what happened was I got out of my comfort zone. I did it. I learnt how to spar. And years go on. Now I can jump into the ring and just do it because I'm confident, right? So I don't get that anxious feeling anymore. So that's the same with the mind, right? So if you are faced with something that you're not used to, that you haven't done before, which you lack control over, then what happens is that you start feeling anxious, right? So my solution to it all is to regain control, and, train your mind to know as much as possible about what you're doing. So that comes down to education, experience, and, teaching your mind to be tough. So it's mental fitness, just like physical fitness. So that's my take on anxiety.
Yep. Obviously you sound like you've exercised this a lot, and this question might throw you off if you don't have an exact answer right now, but what are the top 2 strategies that you used to get out of that? You were saying exercise your mind and get stronger within your mind.
Yep.
For the people listening, what can they do that will help that?
I think the main 2 things that I've done in tackling anxiety is exercise. So I train twice a day, and it's at a point now where if I don't train twice a day, it's really weird. You know what I mean? It actually messes with my mind because you release those endorphins, right? So my body's kind of craving that, and I'm able to tackle situations so much better when I have exercised throughout the day, right? So that's one thing. The second thing is constant education. Now, that's self-education, not formal education. So when I say self-education, that's, that could be reading books, reading articles, going to seminars, listening to podcasts, like what these guys are listening to right now. So, but constantly feeding your mind with good stuff, right? By that constant information going into your mind and making sure that it gets absorbed, you become smarter, which means that you gain more control over the things that you're doing in your life. So exercise and education are probably my 2 biggest solutions when it comes to anxiety.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've had some big business anxieties as well, but a few personal too. Mine was initially sparked from a relationship from years ago, and that happened. A few things happened that sparked anxiety within that, and just the environment that I was in at the same time too. I actually remember that I don't know, I might have been like 23. I actually had a panic attack one day, and it was purely to do with my environmental surroundings and my thought process to what that was at the same time as well. Now, I actually did go and seek help myself. I went and saw he's a life coach. It wasn't actually someone that's a psychologist or anything like that, but he does neuro-linguistic programming. And for me, that worked a treat. That worked amazingly. Gave me a lot of strategy, but it actually helped me to see how to get out of anything like that. And help other people do the same thing too. So for me, like I said before, it was being creative. Picking something in my life where I can grow, so like you were saying, education, or grow something. So my first point on getting out of an anxious state for myself was actually starting and growing a business. And then more anxiety came from that because you're learning as you go, and there's a million things that come with that at the same time as well. But starting that and having a goal and sort of reverse engineering that in a business state was what actually got me out of a normal anxiety state in the first place. Because you have something to work towards, you have purpose again, you feel amazing, and you're doing something that is helping people's lives left, right, and centre. So that, for me, brought me out of a shit state, to be fair.
To help others.
To help others, exactly right. To give back, create, and help others was what got me out of a shit state in the best possible way. That and one that I know you do daily, and something that I do daily is writing down your gratitudes. Mm-hmm. Because if you're in an anxious state, it's probably because you're focusing on the negative. Mm-hmm. Usually, what happens in when you're focusing on the negative is when that's when you're going to get into your most anxious state, because you only think about the bad things around you. Mm-hmm. If you focus on the good, anxiety is something that's going to start fading away pretty damn quickly. Mm. And that's just a natural thing, to be fair. If you're focusing on the negative, you're going to see some bad things happen to you, but that's because it's what you're focusing on. Mm. If you write down daily 5 things, that's what I did every morning when I was in that bad state, focusing on the things that made me happy to be alive, it got me out of an anxious state pretty quickly. And, you know, if it's not enough to do that in the morning, just start thinking about it when you're driving the car, you know, like the fact that you have a car to drive is something to be grateful for. Mm. Air to breathe, you know, petrol in the car so the car actually moves.
It's easy to forget sometimes.
It is. You know. It's easy to forget, and then people get really, what's the word? Entitled to so many different things, you know what I mean? And that entitlement's a huge one that I think that we should almost cover, and, you know, to take action and responsibilities for your own actions as well in a later podcast. But entitlement's huge, because we don't necessarily just deserve anything we have. Everything we work for, you deserve to reap the benefits. Mm. But just because you have it doesn't mean that you deserve it sometimes. Mm. Having air to breathe, you don't necessarily... It doesn't mean you deserve it. Mm. Some people can be a waste of oxygen if they're not providing the world with a service that helps them in some way, shape or form. Mm. So that one for me was a huge one. Massive. Mark, talk to us.
So we've got about 30 minutes, so I'll probably take all 30. P-brain's on a roll now. All right. So what was the question again?
Tell us about anxiety and your experiences with it.
What it means to you?
Goodness, where do I start? Well, what Zara touched on it before, actually. He said a loss of control. Mm. That, in my eyes, is what anxiety is. It's the loss of control in any situation that you've been placed in. It could be personal, business. I guess those are the 2 big ones, I think. Like you mentioned earlier. It's if you have no control, you start to you think the worst, and that's, you know, again, like you were saying before, Chris. It's then you versus your brain. That's all anxiety is. It's a loss of control. Then it's you versus your brain. Now, you said as well, what are some things to combat anxiety that Zara had done on a personal level, and yourself. What I had done, and it was unintentionally actually, but I had lost my license. I was in a bad spot. Business was up and down, and I had to get a bike to get to work because I was a bit far from a station, and, you know, all new to the whole public transport stuff. So I was like, whatever, I'm going to jump on a bicycle. Getting on a bicycle was the best thing I ever did. I was lucky that I lived, you know, about 15 Ks or so from work at the time. So it was a good 30K ride every day, there and back. And it just gave you time to think. But think of the good, not so much appreciate things, but just kind of think of the problems that you've got to face for the day while you're exercising. All right? And it was like, okay, by the time you get to your destination, when you're faced with the problems, it's kind of like...
You're ready to tackle them.
You're kind of semi-exhausted as well, and you're like... It's not even that big.
No.
What are you going to throw in my face? You're going to tell me that we owe money, or I've heard it all before.
Yeah.
What's going to be?
It's
different
easier
today?
to deal with those stresses.
So much easier. So then, that was one. And then when I was still living in that same area, I remember I think I was getting freaked out, and which caused a lot of anxiety with crowds of people. Right. So then I had to jump back onto the public transport because some days it would be raining and whatnot, and I was like, all right, well, how do I get to work? You know, again, no license. So I was like, I'm going to jump on public transport now. Peak hour, trains close to the city. It's going to be
crazy,
chock-a-block. And I would, after a while, it wasn't straight from the get-go, but I'd try and look for the most condensed area and put myself in the area that I'd fear the most. And I'd be like, okay, you could feel the panic coming on, but then I was like, hang on, I can feel it coming on, but what's going to happen to me?
You're not going to die.
I'm not going to die. Mm. I'm here. I'm controlling my breathing. I'm controlling everything around me that I can actually control. Like we've mentioned in other podcasts, we can't control everything around us, but the stuff that we can, as long as we focus on that. And that's what I did. I focused on breathing, and I focused on my position. I was like, all right, I'm pretty happy. And then it was I started